Dramagat a hachta. Glémanis an teachta Éamon Gilmore Canada Fáti an Lochdibre an Ahascian.
Ceann Comhairle Scuiniúsla. Sa teomra seo, nócha bliain ó shin, cuireadh feol gaon lethach ar I déalacha éirí na Cósca. Ar an láthair starúil seo, genú an réabhlóid a gaon lethach. Don chéad uair I stair na hÉireann, leagú síos clár oibre politiúil chun an réabhlóid a chóirt chun feirfeachta. Bhí an clár déan lethach I measc ornádaí na céad dála. Clár a scríomh Tom Johnson, ceanara an lucht oibre ag an am. Agus labhraíonn na principal a thoilsíonn an clár sin fóstúin sa lá atá nniuáin, saoirse, ionanas agus an ceart don Uileánna, rusc déan lethach dúin éirí na céad dála. In this round room, 90 years ago, the old ways came to an end and a new era was begun. On January the 21st, 1919, as our first TDs gathered here, life for most people in Ireland was very hard. Europe had just been ravaged and redivided by a bloody, senseless imperialist war which claimed the lives of 50,000 of our fellow Irishmen. Another 10,000 people had died from flu in the previous year. Hundreds of thousands lived in slums and abject poverty. The general election of 1918 was the first when all adult men and almost all women got the vote. 2 out of every 3 voters in 1918 were on the electoral register for the first time. And they used this new political opportunity to sweep away the old order, away with the seemingly impregnable Irish Parliamentary Party, which had been built up by Parnell, now replaced by a popular independence movement. And instead of going to Westminster, they came here to build something new, a democratic parliament that owed much to the liberal parliamentary tradition which had supported the Irish cause in the latter part of the 19th century. The proceedings that day were short, but the objectives were great. A declaration of independence, an appeal to the nations of the world read in Irish, English and French in the hope that Ireland would be seated at the post-war peace conference. And the Democratic Programme, setting out a vision for what democracy and independence would mean in practice for the people of the country. The Democratic Programme was written by the then leader of the Labour Party, Tom Johnson. But Johnson and his colleagues sat in the public gallery that day. They were not TDs in that first Dáil, because Labour had decided not to contest the 1918 election so as not to split the vote of the independence movement. That was a patriotic, selfless decision, putting country before party by a Labour movement which was playing a central role in the events of the time. Labour was pivotal in the anti-conscription campaign which mobilised Irish people in the run-up to the election, including the organisation of a general strike. And it was Labour which won the very first international recognition for Ireland's independence at the Socialist International in Bern in 1919, a few weeks after the meeting of the first Dáil. The Democratic Programme of the first Dáil was steeped in the ideals of Labour and was brimming with optimism. 90 years later, those same values were never more relevant, and the optimism was never more necessary. Echoing down the years, the words of the Democratic Programme reproach us, challenge us, and yet inspire us. Even before our present economic difficulties, as a country, we had not vindicated what the programme called the right of every citizen to an adequate share of the produce of the nation's labour. Mired as we are again in scandal about the abuse of children, and considering the consequences of cutbacks in education, can we say that we have lived up to the objective that the first duty of the government of the Republic is to make provision for the physical, mental and spiritual well-being of the children? Can the elderly patient lying on a hospital trolley or the pensioners defending their medical cards and their pension rights feel that the nation's aged and infirm shall not be regarded as a burden, but rather entitled to the nation's gratitude and consideration? As we see this week how a small number of greedy individuals have brought economic havoc to our country, we can reflect on the simple statement in the Democratic Programme that it is the duty of every man and woman to give service, and as thousands lose their jobs, that it is the duty of the nation to assure that every citizen shall have the opportunity to spend his or her strength and faculties in the service of the people. This day of commemoration comes at another difficult moment in our country's history, when we are confronted again with the human consequences of economic mistakes, a time of uncertainty and apprehension. But we can take heart from the pioneers who assembled here 90 years ago. We too can make a new beginning. That first Dáil faced near impossible obstacles. What they achieved was not inevitable. They endured pain, but they chose to make new history. They were free, and they freed this country because they refused to be prisoners of their own past. In this our time, as we too face a moment of national crisis, we should be inspired by their words and by their courage. We too can forge a new beginning and sweep away the failings of the past. We too can be inspired to build a sustainable prosperity and a fair society, a country that respects its old and values its young, a country governed, as the first Dáil decided, by the principles of liberty, equality and justice for all. I know it is not possible to make a formal proposal here, but may I suggest that we should consider making January the 21st our National Independence Day. Brahim Chimpel Orin Anu, Taib Shi Fahik Niked Dala, nor Lek on Krogucht Orho. Firis Minol, Araushe Dagoniacht Achu, Bring Lloyd Nua a Haulu, the winter Nahera. Bring Lloyd Oskelta, Ulruk. Bring Lloyd a Huruk Sirsha on Moktaras. Bring Lloyd a Churuk in a Shasav Arandal Hosh Fainid. Agus she Dulhan ne Linisha, no on Krogucht a Halavu a Rish le Passion. Unsnak mai Shela Raw, a young Kade Blian Ella, Gershina, on Gloon a Hungan Drem Loiva, Don Foblocht Ulruk Dain Lahak Shin, a Honig an Seal, in a Lanav, a Urlor on Chomra Shaw, Nocha Blian Ohen.